I've been trying to create a slower life. Less rushing, fewer evenings disappearing into your phone, more time for myself, more analog activities. And on paper, this should be perfect for someone with ADHD. Less chaos, less overstimulation, less noise, fewer demands. But I've discovered something I didn't expect. Slow living isn't necessarily restful for an ADHD brain. Sometimes it's actually harder. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Becca. I talk too much. And at the moment we are talking about slow living, tips to make our lives quieter but more wholesome, more fulfilling, and doing all this with chronic conditions, neurodiversity, or anything else that gets in the way. You can want something intellectually, but you can still crave something different neurologically. My brain doesn't always want calm. I might genuinely want to sit down and read a book, but my brain goes, we should check our phone first. I might want to go for a nice evening walk, and my brain goes, yeah, but we should probably reorganise that kitchen drawer before we do. I want a quiet, relaxing evening, and my brain goes, nah, easy dopamine, TV and phone. The problem isn't that we as ADHDers don't enjoy slow activities, it's that ADHD can make stimulation feel compelling or essential. So sometimes you're sitting in a perfectly lovely, peaceful environment and you're thinking, why am I bored? Why do I feel restless? Why don't I feel relaxed? Now, I will caveat this video by saying I am not diagnosed with ADHD, and I know there are plenty of self-diagnosed neurodiverse people out there, many of whom possibly are not neurodiverse, but have some symptoms. So I don't want to take away from people that do have an actual diagnosis or expertise in this area. However, I see a lot of symptoms in my diagnosed friends, in myself. That has become more and more obvious as I've hit perimenopause and my 40s. And whilst I may not have ADHD, I think there's a good chance if I do seek diagnosis that I would get diagnosed. With ADHD, there is a mental exhaustion that I don't think enough people are aware of. Trying to live slowly can itself be mentally demanding, and when that's on top of your entire day spent consciously managing distractions, impulses, unfinished tasks, the lure of your phone, your attention span, the urge to multitask, remembering what you're supposed to be doing and then deciding what you should be doing instead. And with all this focus at the moment on the internet with slow living, slowing down, being peaceful, being mindful, the irony is you're trying to simplify your life while simultaneously using enormous amounts of mental energy to try and slow yourself down. The reality is sometimes slow living doesn't feel like resting. It feels like actively managing our brains until we're too exhausted to do anything. From the outside, someone might think, you're having a quiet evening, you're sat on your phone or you're watching TV, you're not doing anything. What are you tired from? But our brains have been working incredibly hard all day on things that no one else sees. And what's harder for people with ADHD is we don't always know how to explain what's happening in our heads. It's not that we can't communicate. We can often, if you're anything like me, talk for hours. But our thoughts don't arrive in a neat, patterned order that we can pass on clearly to people. We jump between ideas, we interrupt because we're scared we're going to forget what we're about to say or lose the opportunity to say it. We give too much context. There's no such thing as a short story with an ADHDer. It's very easy for other people to interpret the way we communicate as us overthinking, us making it too complicated, wanting us to just get to the point. And internally, all we're thinking is, I'm trying, I've just got 17 tabs open in my brain right now. And that adds to the exhaustion, because when you know what you mean but can't successfully communicate it, it's so draining and tiring. and frustrating, especially when we're trying to communicate with the important people in our lives. An important part of slow living is about having enough space to actually listen to yourself. But if you're constantly trying to translate what's happening in your head for other people, that can be really exhausting too. Outside of communication, there's the whole productivity issue. Slow living is about intentionally doing less. But ADHD makes productivity feel emotionally rewarding. So when you intentionally do less, you experience guilt. So when I sit down with a book, instead of thinking, oh, lovely, some time to myself to read, my brain, that horrible little voice at the back of my brain starts going, we should probably be doing something. We should be cleaning. We should be replying to that email. You should be phoning your mother. You should be researching your next video topic. You should be searching the internet, scrolling, anything that feels like you're doing something. It is really hard to tell an ADHD brain that rest is productive in its own right. Rest is valuable, it's worthwhile, and it's something we need and is important. With ADHD, it can be easy to see rest as the enemy, when it's really our greatest ally. The biggest paradox between living with something like ADHD and wanting to achieve slow living and a mindful lifestyle is sometimes I need stimulation and rest. Slow living doesn't mean that every ADHD person needs to live in a cottage reading novels by candlelight. Sometimes our brains need stimulation, and that's okay. We just have to accept that maybe the goal isn't how can I make myself calmer? Maybe it's how can I give myself the right kind of stimulation without completely exhausting myself? So reading an essay or an article online may be not as mindful as reading a book, but it's a step up from doom scrolling. Going for a walk with your headphones isn't mindfully enjoying the sounds of nature, but it gets you outside, it gets you exercise and fresh air while still stimulating your brain. Cooking something new, creative hobbies, buying a new book, getting a new magazine subscription, seeing friends, doing something with your own hands. These are all great ways to stimulate our dopamine-starved brains without falling back on the old laying on the sofa reading our phones. Slow living for us should be the intentional stimulation rather than endless stimulation. So, all that said, what have I learned about slow living with ADHD? Lesson number 1 is that slow doesn't mean doing nothing. Slow can mean doing something quietly, doing something gently, doing something with purpose. It doesn't mean laying around doing nothing. Lesson number 2 is accepting that restlessness does not mean you've failed at relaxing. If you can't settle, don't beat yourself up about it. If curling up with a book isn't doing what you need it to do for you, then get up and do something else. It's okay. You've not failed. You just need something different at this time. Lesson number 3 is very simply, some stimulation is necessary and healthy. People who've mastered the art of slow living aren't living some zen, mild tapioca lifestyle with no stimulation. And if they are, they should probably be a bit worried. All brains need some level of stimulation to keep us interested, to keep us engaged, to keep us curious. You need that in your life. Sure, ADHDers need a bit more stimulation than most, but it's not a bad thing. Lesson 4 is I don't have to make my life boring in order to make it slower. If I can't settle and I want to leave the house and go for a walk, that's fine. If I want to book a second riding lesson for the week, I can do that. I don't have to treat doing something interesting or stimulating as something to be punished. Slow living just means doing things with purpose, not avoiding them. Lesson 5, the goal is less friction, not perfection. ADHDers and firstborn children can really struggle with wanting to be perfect. We don't start things unless we think we're going to be good at them. And the aim of slow living is not to be perfect at slow living. It's not trying to become a Zen monk. It is about doing more restful things, doing more peaceful, mindful things, and building that into your way of living. Because the biggest lesson I've learned is slow living isn't about becoming a different person. It's about building a life that works with the person you actually are. Now, as I said in a previous video, I'm not trying to become someone who runs off to a cottage in the middle of nowhere and does nothing but drink herbal teas and read books. As nice as that sounds for a couple of weeks, I would get bored pretty quickly. What I am trying to get from this slow living pursuit is to reclaim my time, my attention, and who I really am. I'm trying to stop every spare moment being swallowed by work, phone, chores, scrolling, sleep, repeat. And I'm trying to replace that with more mindful, more purposeful activities and behaviours. Slow living with ADHD is not about slowing down your brain. It's about stopping the rest of your life from constantly demanding that your brain speed up. Maybe I don't need to learn how to live slowly. Maybe I just need to learn to live at a pace that doesn't constantly leave me behind. If any of that resonates with you at all, I'd love to hear how you cope with ADHD whilst trying to live a slower, more mindful life. If you haven't been diagnosed like me, but strongly suspect you have ADHD, what's that like for you? How is that impacting your life? And if, like me, you feel like you're constantly on the edge of burnout and are desperately seeking a slower, more meaningful, purposeful life, then give me a follow, give me a like, and I'll be doing more videos like this. I'm Becca, I talk too much. I'll see you in the next video.